As a society, we're so emotionally depleted. We're so emotionally weak that when something bad happens, we don't even know how to deal with it. It floors us. We don't know how to have conversations that are difficult anymore. Because the minute a difficult conversation comes up, we just grab our phone and tune out the world. We can't talk about money. We can't talk about love. We can't talk about religion. We can't talk about politics. We can't talk about business. Wait, what do we talk about then? We can't talk about our pain. We can't be open. We can't be vulnerable. What do we talk about then? The gift in life is the pain you go through. Don't ask for an extraordinarily good life if you're not willing to take extraordinary bads. The bads let you know that the good is worth it. Don't expect you just get good surprises. Sometimes you're going to get a bad surprise. Be emotionally resilient because bad things are going to happen. Not because the universe is a messed up place. It's just because that's part of the living experiences. There's good and there's bad. What's up? Vikram Deal here. And I haven't shared this message openly and freely because, I was still internally processing kind of what I've been going through. And I've shared it a little bit, but I haven't really gone into it. And 6 months ago, my girl and I broke up. And for those of you who followed me or you guys followed me on Instagram, you probably saw a shift in my content, right? And I actually lost my motivation and drive to create content. I used to have a weekly time block where I made content and I would post my ex on there and we'd have a lot of fun, and it was a lot of like cutesy energy and a lot of like fun energy, and it was a lot of playfulness. And when we broke up, it was like a little piece of me had died. And I decided, she was a very special human. I decided that this time I wasn't going to go down my normal path of destruction. This time I was going to go down a path of reconstruction and internalization. And I didn't realize that I was going to go on a celibacy mission for the last 6 months. I didn't realize that I was going to go and meditate and exercise and not go out on dates. When we first broke up, I kind of went out on a few dates, and every time I realized I just don't want to be out there right now. And I don't want to talk to somebody else, and I don't want to try to fill that emptiness with another human, because it wasn't fair to them and it wasn't fair to me, and it wasn't fair to my ex, who had poured so much love and energy into helping me see that I was a better person than what I thought I was. And people say, well, why can't you go back to her? Well, once ships have sailed, sometimes they don't sail back to the original port. They go on to the next port, the next part of the world, and, they move on. And you can either wish wish they come back, or you can appreciate the time that you had together. And, we had probably one of the most interesting breakups, not for her, but for me, because we kind of knew at that point that we weren't ever going to be back together. And we knew that this might be the last time we ever talk again. It's hard to say that out loud. It sucks to have to say that out loud, right? Because she was such an integral part of the Vikram you see today. And she was such an integral part of me going back to therapy and me hiring the right coaches that have allowed me to build myself up, and the right mentors to build myself back up, to build the business. I mean, when I look at what we're doing, there really isn't anybody else in the world that I want to tell but her and share with her. And it's been rewarding, and it's been super hard. It's rewarding that I believe in myself. It took her and us breaking up for me to start to actually believe in myself, because I actually had to stop and sit down and say, okay, I'm gonna start looking at me and start making myself better. I'm gonna start. When we broke up, right? This is the quality of this woman. She said, when we first started dating, you had a therapist, you had a life coach that you talked to on a regular basis, and then as you started traveling and as money became tight, and things started to shift, you cut the therapist out. And I noticed you changed. I noticed you became different. I noticed that things weren't the same. And I said, you're right. And she says, why don't you make a commitment for 6 months and promise me? I said, but you're not going to be here. She said, just because I'm not here doesn't mean I don't still want good for you. Just because we didn't work out doesn't mean I don't want good for you. Just because we might never talk again. Oof. Ooh, saying that out loud is painful. Just because we may never talk again doesn't mean that I don't want you to have a quality life. Because I truly believe that you deserve it. And if only you could pour into yourself like you pour into others, like you could change the world. And she would tell me that every day. And she said, you should go back and you should commit to doing it for 6 months. And 6 months ago, business was starting to get better, but it was still super far off from, where I felt comfortable spending the amount of money that I was spending to have those weekly sessions, right? It was still far off from me feeling financially stable, right? Because I had some debts that I really wanted to pay off. I had a couple $100,000 in credit cards. I had a personal loan. I had some things, and I wanted to get, 6 figures in the bank as fast as possible. And she says, I feel like it'd be good for you. And she said, just promise me you'll do it. And I said, well, I don't necessarily. She says, no, just think about all the money you would spend on me and Ubers and, because she was on my Uber account, and like food and dating and buying stuff and clothes. Like, think about all the money you spend on a monthly basis, that if you just stopped doing that and poured that into yourself for 6 months, like what would happen? Like, that's a good human right there. And I did. And we're coming up on 6 months in about a week. And there's been a lot of growth and a lot of reflection. And I owe so much to this woman. If I could write her a letter and get it to her, they currently, from what I heard, we haven't talked in 6 months, right? Because I think we both realized that we needed to give space and separation. But if I could write her a letter and just express my gratitude, right? And just thank her for believing in me when I couldn't even look in a mirror. If I could express my gratitude towards her and actually have this message reach her, if any of you guys want to send this out, I'd be forever grateful. But there hasn't been more than a day or two that hasn't gone by where I've thought about her and I've journaled, I've meditated, I've prayed for her well-being, praying for her to be happy, praying for her to be safe, praying for her to be in a better place, praying for myself. Super thankful for her belief in me. Super thankful for last year when we locked ourselves in a hotel room and just script practiced for 3-4 days straight. Like, I still have all of the notes we took and the updates we made and, the changes we made to the script, and just role played for 4 days, 5 days straight, because she believed in me. She believed in my mission. She believed in what we were doing. And she wanted to help me be better. She didn't want a watch. She didn't want jewelry. She didn't want a fancy trip. She didn't care. She didn't want anything. She didn't ask for anything. She never asked for anything, ever. Even like when I would get her Ubers here in Colombia, she would always take the cheap one. And one day I saw her get into the car after a couple weeks. I'm like, why are you in this little shitty car, babe? She's like, well, because I don't want to spend extra money. And I'm like, well, no, that's just dumb. Like, get the safer car, get the bigger car, get the better drivers. And she's like, yeah, but it's going to cost you more money. And I'm like, babe, we're fine. You don't need to worry about my problems. Like, let me worry about my problems. You just get home safe. And she's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, like, I'll figure it out. Like, always concerned about everybody else. Why am I sharing this with you? Like, who gives a fuck, Vikram? I'm like, shut up, stop your bickering. Sometimes we have to stop and slow down to speed up. We have to do the internal work for the external work to take hold. Sometimes, right, we want our business to grow, but we're not ready to handle that new business, right? Maybe we're at 10,000 a month or 20,000 a month or 15,000 a month or 30,000 a month, and we want to go to 40 or 50. And we do all the sales training, right? I install the language patterns and we install the psychology, and you understand fundamentally how to do things until you heal yourself from things that you feel guilty about. And let me tell you, like, I feel very guilty about this relationship. I feel very guilty about a lot of things in this relationship. I feel very guilty about a lot of the relationships that I've been in. I feel very mad at myself that I allowed myself to become like that and to be so oblivious to such glaring things that I didn't want to look at and focus on and work on. And I would just bury myself in dating and drinking and partying and come home and cry. I was with my friend the other day and we went out to dinner and she and I were just talking, and I shared a story with her about, I don't know, 10 years ago. I was on the freeway. It was pretty quiet day. It's a Saturday or a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday. I had my dog in the front seat, and this is when I had a supercharged Range Rover, right? Finances were good. I had a supercharged Range Rover, it was completely paid off. I hated myself. And I got in the car and I had my dog, and Boss, his name is Boss. He's a rescue, so he's very timid. So he's not sitting on the seat with his head out the window. He like buries his head in the footwell, whatever, and kind of like hides when he's in a car. And I'm driving and I could tell he's scared, and I'm got the music off and I'm just like in my head, right? And something just comes over me. I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I swear to God, he knew I was thinking that, because like he goes from like his head covers to like his eyeballs are just staring at me. And I was like, there's nobody on the road. It's cold, it's rainy. I knew exactly where I was. I was driving from Bellevue up to Snoqualmie. I was going like 80. I just took off my seatbelt and I just slowly pushed the accelerator faster and faster and faster. I was going about 100, 110. And I was like, I could just take my hands off the wheel going uphill, big cliff. I could just take my hands off the wheel for 30 seconds and the car's gonna just go straight off the cliff. And I actually took my hands off the wheel for a second and I pressed on the accelerator and I kind of looked down. I just saw him looking at me and I'm like, God, it's like my savior. Like, how could I hurt him? And I stopped. I slowed down and I got to a safe place. I pulled over. I just started thinking, tears in my eyes, probably crying. I don't remember, kind of like a haze. But like, how selfish is it for me to have a first responder come pick my carnage up off of a mangled up car, the dog, like, okay, I could let the dog out, right? This went through my head. I could let the dog out and tie him to the side of the road and somebody will see him and see a leash and they'll pull over and they'll call 911 and he'll be fine. He'll get rescued again. Somebody will take him. What my parents think. All these things started going through my mind. And I was just like, I can't do it. And I've quietly held this inside for my whole life. You can go to the events, you can go to the Tony Robbins, you can dance up and down, you can take the selfies, you can show yourself in all these big rooms with cool people, but you can still feel like you don't belong. You can make as much money in the world and still feel like you don't belong. You can be broke and feel like you belong. You can be rich and feel like you don't. You can be broke and feel like you do. At the end of the day though, the most important work you'll ever do is the work you do on yourself. Yes, you need to know how to market. Yes, you need to know how to sell. Yes, all of these business skills you need, right? And if you don't have them, like, you will definitely benefit from getting them, right? Knowing how to put yourself out there, knowing how to do presentations, all of that is super important to making money. But the money will always leave you unless you work on yourself. Because you'll never feel, you'll get to maybe 20,000 in your checking account, then you're like, I gotta go blow this all. You get to maybe 100,000, you go blow it all. For me, my life was good in 2018. I had a paid off car, I had zero debt, I had a line of credit for, unsecured line of credit for a few $100,000. I had a bunch of credit card availability. Like I had money in the bank, a few $100,000 in the bank. It wasn't crazy money, but it was a few $100,000. I still was getting referral fees, so I was still bringing in six figures every year, mid six figures every year just off of referral fees from the real estate stuff. I didn't have to work. I could have literally traveled the world and done absolutely nothing and made enough money to live a great life for 4 or 5 years. And instead, I decided to start a business with my dad, one that I didn't want to do. And I didn't work on myself. I continued to drink. I continued to party, right? I left the business because it was too much for me. I was making too much money. I didn't believe I deserved that much success. So I sabotaged the business, shut it down on a whim, thought I was going to come back and change the world, but you can't change the world until you change yourself. Little did I know that it was going to take 6 years, 5 years to get even remotely back on my feet. But I had to go all the way from almost $700,000 of available assets to literally selling everything, having the hardest breakup of my life, hurting a lot of people in the process, hurting myself in the process, going into $1 million in debt. And it took, after all of that, it took my ex-girlfriend belief in me to believe in myself. But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't slow down and do the work on myself after we broke up. I think that if we were together, what I accomplished in 6 months would probably take me 2 or 3 years. If I even ever got to that level. Moral of the story, 6 months of silence will change your life faster than 5 years of talking. 6 months of isolation, 6 months of working on yourself, 6 months of doing the work, the real work, the most important work, probably changed generations of trauma that you've acquired because anybody was trying to hurt you, just because everybody has generational trauma, right? Your mom and dad spoke into you as a young man or a woman, certain things that you now speak into the universe. You don't even know where it came from. Well, it came from your grandparents. Not saying they're bad, not saying they didn't love you. They had trauma that they didn't work on. And even those that have great, perfect lives, there's still something there that somebody said on accident. Do the work. Do the internal work. Sit in silence more. Turn your cell phone off when you go to the restroom. Like literally, how many of us take our cell phones into the bathroom while we're sitting there on the toilet? Like that's actually pretty gross, because then you take that same hand, you wipe yourself with it, and then you take that hand and you put it up to your phone and you're touching your screen, and then you put the phone up to your face, right? And most of us don't have like an alcohol bottle to like spray your phone off every day to clean it. Most people don't clean their phone. Like especially women with makeup and stuff, like guys that work in like greasy environments, you might clean your phone off a little bit more. But like, y'all, I've seen some of the phones that I've cleaned, my mom's, my aunt's, my friends, and it's like, screen looks clean, but there's so much crap on it. Tangent. And sit in silence. When you're at a coffee shop and you're waiting for your friends, just sit in silence. Let your brain just be your brain and think and be creative. When you're waiting for your loved ones at dinner and you're early, that early time is a gift for you. God gave you a gift to sit there with yourself, by yourself, and look around and see other humans and see their interactions and take a moment to breathe and just let your shoulders drop, right? Like my shoulders aren't even right now. Like we're always so busy holding things in our hands. Like our bodies aren't even aligned because we hold typically the same way over and over again. The gift in life is the pain you go through. It's not easy. The gift in life is the pain you go through. Don't ask for an extraordinarily good life if you're not willing to take extraordinary bads. The bads let you know that the good is worth it. Don't expect to just get good surprises. Sometimes you're going to get a bad surprise. Be emotionally resilient, because bad things are going to happen. Not because the universe is a messed up place. It's just because that's part of the living experiences. There's good and there's bad. As a society, we're so emotionally depleted. We're so emotionally weak that when something bad happens, we don't even know how to deal with it. It floors us. We don't know how to have conversations that are difficult anymore. Because the minute a difficult conversation comes up, we just grab our phone and tune out the world. We can't talk about money. We can't talk about love. We can't talk about religion. We can't talk about politics. We can't talk about business. Wait, what do we fucking talk about then? We can't talk about our pain. We can't be open. We can't be vulnerable. What do we talk about then? So let me tell you, I don't believe that Taylor Swift is my fucking idol. I don't believe that the next superstar on athletics is my idol. I don't know anything about them, and I really don't care to know anything about them. They have a gift. Like Michael Jordan has a gift, right? He worked hard to develop that gift, but I believe he had some natural abilities which allowed him to be who he was. Now, he didn't throw those natural abilities away. He worked to become better. If I could tell Salome how thankful I was to her, and I guess in this indirect way I would on my hands and knees thank her for all she gave me. I'm far from healed, but I know I'm getting better because I want to share. And I know what would have taken me years and years and years to be able to share with people, I'm able to share more quickly now, which means things shifted in the last 6 months. Having a couple of, I I have a male therapist and I have a female like transcendental business coach. So you get the masculine and the feminine. He's more masculine. She's definitely 100% in her feminine. And I get to bounce ideas off of them and hear their feedback. What's cool is just like a good coach that puts you on a scale and takes your measurements and says, hey, you've got more muscle mass. Hey, you've got less fat. Hey, you lost 10 pounds. Hey, depending on what kind of system they use, your hydration is up. Hey, your visceral fat is down. Hey, your arms are equalizing themselves out. Hey, your pain is down. Hey, right? They get to say what they've noticed over the last 30, 60, 90, 180 days. The hardest times are also followed by the best times. And the best times don't always last, and the hard times don't always last. But you making yourself resilient always lasts. Good things are going to happen before you die. Bad things are going to happen before you die. You're not being punished, you're being blessed. It's a reminder I have to give myself, especially at night. The hardest parts are the night times, right? Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays are my worst days because people are with their family, they're with their kids, they're with their dogs, they're at the coffee shops. And it's the weekends that are really hard for me because I know I'm not alone, but it feels like it. But I know that these hard times are there for a purpose. And it's my job in this human experience to figure it out. Anyways, thanks for letting me share. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. And we'll be back to our regular program, sales training, next week.